If you would open your Bibles to the book of John, the 13th chapter. We will read verses 1 through 7. Book of John, 13, 1 through 7. Now before the feast of the Passover, when Jesus knew that his hour had come to depart out of this world to the Father, having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. During supper, when the devil had already put into the heart of Judas Iscariot, Simon's son, to betray him, Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hand, and that he had come from God and was going back to God, rose from supper. He laid aside his outer garments, and taking a towel, tied it around his waist. Then he poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with a towel that was wrapped around him. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, "Lord, do you wash my feet?" Jesus answered him, "What I am doing you do not understand now, but afterwards you will understand."
Good morning. Oh, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. Bringing back greetings from Oak Island. Got to go over and see a couple of dear friends for a couple of days. Got to spend some time with Bubba and Lynette. My wife assisted in birthing 108 baby turtles. If you've ever been to the island, 109 nests on the island. New record on the island of baby turtles. That's the reason that's why we got in at 2:30 this morning. It was the Olympics was part of the fault. We were there waiting for another nest to boil. That's a weird term for me. That's what they call it. And all those little baby turtles head for the ocean. Really, really cool event. And in the middle of that, Simone and Michael and all the folks are winning medals. It's all really cool. But I also bring you greetings back. Bobby Grigsby looks great. I know so many of you have had him in your prayers, and Bonnie's kept him hid from so many folks. But he is doing fantastic, feeling good, back at work, and just appreciates so much. He wanted me to express to you this morning how much he appreciates so many of you. Cards, calls, and prayers have just meant the world to them, and so they just appreciate that. Proverbs 15:25. The Lord will destroy the house of the proud. And one translation says, tear it down. You go, how in the world are you talking about? We're reading in John 13. There's no pride involved in that moment. That's what I'm talking about. There's an incredibly amazing moment that happens in the upper room. I really appreciate what Pat just said. Never had thought about it from that perspective. I know there's a lot of dichotomies, oxymorons in Scripture, and when you think of the fact that he came in last so that we could be rewarded, phenomenal thought. And that's what happens in the upper room. In fact, if you remember, prior to this moment, Jesus turns to the disciples, and it's kind of an interesting journey. He says, "Go find a guy." Didn't give him a name according to Scripture. Ask him about, tell him the master would like to observe the Passover there. He'll take you to a room. Now this is the cool part of this. Usually when a meal was prepared, there were certain provisions made for that meal. Food. Got to have food. And if you'll notice, Da Vinci didn't have it right. Okay, I hate to burst your bubble, but the Last Supper portrait is inaccurate, most likely. There wasn't a nice dining table with a cool tablecloth on it and them all sitting around it. It's probably an upper room somewhere. There are no tables and they're all reclining. If you notice, well, they're kind of sitting really close to each other. And it's in that reclined eating position that a normal meal, and especially the Passover, take place in a closed room. I'm kind of highlighting all of this as you consider them getting together for this. And when you think of the proximity of it, you think of the supper itself, there's something that's always in that same room, and it's all the feet of the individuals that have been walking. Those are dirty feet. Those are dirty feet. It's kind of reminds me of, and I hate to take you here because some of you have had this experience, walking into cabin 12 about Wednesday at Carolina Bible Camp. There's a new aroma in town. Not a good one. Foot washing was never some ethereal, magnanimous, special. It was a necessary task. Somebody had to do it. That's what I think is so cool about the upper room. Somebody was supposed to wash the feet. Jesus had put the disciples in charge of washing the feet. You go, well, no, he didn't. He told them to prepare the supper. Preparing the supper included all of the particulars. Now, ladies, and the guys don't get this, but when you're getting ready for a big dinner, there are particular protocols you go through, right? Certain things are made sure. With ladies, lady preparation and men, it's two different. It's like man clean and woman clean, two different levels. There's two different levels. Now, some of you are going to come to argue, no, I don't. And most of the time, there's two different levels of clean, two different levels of preparation. These are the 12 disciples. Peter and the two sons of thunder are getting dinner ready. Which one of them is going to say, I'll wash the feet? Because what was that? That task was left. That was the low guy. The doulos, as the text, now that's a word that's used for servant all throughout the New Testament, but in essence, as we find out in first century culture, the person that had foot washing duty hadn't had a good week to start with. Because that was not the one when you go in and you're the one maybe helping the master prepare and you're going, oh, I got foot wash, and what did I do this week? Because it was not fun. It was dirty, it was filthy, but it was necessary. Somebody had to do it. That's why I've always found this scene interesting. I don't know how it took place, but you come in, you get in the room, and I don't know if Jesus, we don't have an order of arrival, but there's got to be this incredible anticipation in the room. I'm not going to say similar to the opening ceremony of the Olympics, but somewhat, this is they're getting together. There was always a big dinner before the victory. The commander's giving us the marching orders. We're getting together. This is where we find out what we're going to do to take over Jerusalem. So in their mind is all about, we're getting ready for the event. And they're getting ready to go through the event. John Ortberg, in a book on leadership, said humility has to do with submitted willingness. It involves a healthy self-forgetfulness, the realization that the universe does not revolve around us. Humility is joyfully sacrificing my rights to serve others' needs. And a really cool quote that I found by Benjamin Franklin. I want to read this slowly. I started to put it up, but listen. There is perhaps no one of our natural passions so hard to subdue as pride. One of the coolest moments for me, and this is my humanness coming out, is when the guy was staring down Phelps. I saw y'all way ahead of me during that event, Phelps he was focused, ignored him. But the coolest moment of that was one of the latter times when Phelps was one of the first ones to go over and congratulate him. It's one of the hardest things to subdue. Beat it down, stifle it, mortify it, and much as one pleases, it's still alive. Even if I could conceive that I had completely overcome it, I should probably be proud of my humility. You hear what he's saying? It's a really tough joker to subdue. Because you can whoop it and he'll show up. Not with Jesus. He's getting ready to communicate some of the more difficult things for them to understand, but he wants to make sure he's got their attention. How do you get their attention? Do something they're not expecting. Nobody expected Jesus to do this task. We thought when he comes to Peter first, Peter's blown away. What are you doing? See, if it had been me, if I'd been Jesus, and I'm not, you should have done this, Peter. That's why I'm doing this. Somebody had to do it. You didn't do it. I am. Not what he said. I mean, can you imagine one of the sons of thunder volunteering, walking up in, I'll be the one that'll walk feet today. Didn't happen. The only person in the room capable was the one who shouldn't have. That's what he'll tell them later. Several things I just want to share with you quickly. See, we've got to learn like Jesus to serve in the small things. A lot of times people want to do the thing that goes, wow, gets everybody's attention. See, when you do something that doesn't get attention and you do it out of a genuine motive, that's when you've succeeded. When you see something nobody knows about and you do it because it needs to be done, it's a necessary task. And I'm not belittling. I know the ladies I know have done it maybe at the retreat. They've had foot, and it's an humbling experience. Tim Pinkston one time washed my feet, and it was one of the most, I went through so many emotions that moment. And it's one of my best buddies in the world, humbling himself, and he made my feet dirty. That was what ticked me off. He actually made it a real experience. We walked through stuff. I didn't enjoy that. And then he went down, and they needed to be washed, and he wasn't the one I wanted doing it. Brett remembers that vividly. That's just, you don't get over, that and you sense, but it's when a necessary thing is done. I shared with the teens, I guess to me one of the moments like that for me that never will leave my memory. The first time I went home after Dad was unable to get out of bed. And the first time Mom was not there, and I had to help my dad. And I could see in his eyes, and you're not supposed to be doing this for me. But for me, it was one of those greatest moments when I could do something for him he could not do for himself, like he had always done in my life. So that's when Jesus in the upper room tried to help them get it. See, that was what was going to make Peter stand up in front of a group of individuals, the same crew that were going to kill him days earlier and could have killed him then, but he didn't care anymore. Because he knew the one who had loved him. And that phrase that was read in John 13, go look quickly back at that. Do you see how it starts? Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. When you love people to the end, you'll do whatever they need. You'll live in the small things, you'll serve in the hidden things. See, pride gets in the way a lot of times, and we'll get accolades and we'll get acknowledged. One of the things I think was cool, I had another quote, and I'm going to share it. I'm going to wait. It's when we serve, because sometimes there's this sense of doing things because we know they'll be acknowledged. Even if we, in our minds, have told ourselves, no, it's not what I'm doing it for. But we got to be really honest with ourselves because we're human. But that was never in Jesus. Or was it? In 13, the first verse, he says, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands and that he had come from God and was going to God. See, one of the ways that gets us to do what we're supposed to do is knowing where we came from and knowing where we're going. And that's God. Or in this case, it's Jesus. He wasn't losing anything in this, and he was going to gain everything. We got to serve in the costly things. I appreciate what Pat said this morning. Cost him everything. The Matthew 16 version of this, if any man will come after me, let him deny himself, because I will. Now, Jesus didn't say that, but he did. When someone asks you to do something that you know they'd do for you, that pretty much negates your choice of whether or not you're going to respond. Because you know their willingness. See, we serve, and Jesus did this. Even in those moments when the disciples would say something that was totally absurd, Jesus still listened. And he helped them. He'll correct them. You've got to realize it, especially in that moment when Peter, remember, Jesus was trying to explain to Peter, I'm going to be murdered and I'm going to be dead 3 days. And Peter said, nope, not going to happen. Jesus was listening when he said, get behind me, Satan. Because you're not thinking about the things of God. You're thinking selfishly. I've been so blessed in my life. My word, I don't know why. The countless number of individuals, selfless hearts. And those are the people that constantly make a difference, not just in my life, but in every life they impact, in every life they touch. Because it's not about them. Doesn't matter what happens to them. They just keep doing the right thing. And that's what Jesus did. He served by being served. You know, wait a minute, that was the conversation with him and Peter. Because Peter said, and it's not hard to see this, when Peter first says, nope, you're not washing my feet. Until Jesus said, well, if I don't wash your feet, you're not with me. Oh, I'm with you. Bath. That's just like us, isn't it? You just tell me what I need to do and I'll do that, okay? He said, Peter, it's just your feet that are dirty. And then he said something that they got but they didn't get. He said, one of you's really dirty. That's when he said, you're all clean, but not all of you. It's in the other version of it is. It's in verse number 11. For he knew he would betray him, therefore he said, you are not all clean. It should have been a dawning moment, because he just watched in a ritualistic Leviticus code sense. They were ready to eat because they had had their feet washed. They could have the meal. Now they proceed. But Jesus even proceeded when they weren't all clean, and he knew it. And it was, of course, Judas, and that whole episode of dipping in the... Now this one you may not get, but I hope you will, is you got to serve beyond your giftedness or your gifting. We talked about this in class this morning. Here's where I could get really personal with this. Think of all the wonderful events we've had as a part of this congregation and the traditional things. I think the Ladies' Day coming up, and sometimes, Janet's just got to really, beg and plead to get individuals to participate. Talk to Chris sometimes even about service during worship, and it's just right at the point of worship, and maybe the individual that's supposed to be here for the opening prayer, the closing prayer, or to help on the table, and he has to ask somebody, and I can't believe somebody would, well, not today. Come on, guys. Yeah, I'm meddling a little bit this morning. I'm getting a little personal. Visitors here, we love you, glad you're here. Sometimes you have to take care of family business. We need to be when somebody asks me to do something, if I have the ability to do it, I'm going to throw one on you that we've been talking about the whole year. What would Jesus do if somebody walked up to him, person didn't show up for the opening prayer, and said, would you lead the prayer? Not today. I don't think so. You help with the ladies? Busy weekend. One weekend a year? Ouch. I'm getting a little touchy. My heart, if I'm going to do, see the flesh, I don't know if I brought that. Yeah, I read that quote. It's the flesh is that part of us that will drive us and draw us and misdirect us if we don't listen to our spiritual side. Because that's how you get self-forgetful, self-servant. Have you ever wondered what Jesus said there in John 13 later when he says, a new commandment I give to you? That you love one another. That's not... I want to say since the garden, but there's no evidence since the garden. Adam and Eve were never given a specific statement. They were told to be fruitful and multiply. But post-Exodus, around Mount Sinai and in Jerusalem and every location, there's been the rededication of love Father with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbors yourself. That's been the core. Even in the law, you walked up to Jesus. What's the greatest commandment? Love your Lord with all your heart, mind, and strength. Love your neighbors yourself. James, Hebrews, they sum up the law. So that means I'm going to serve you. Next slide, because I was thinking of another trigger. Jesus wants us to do for others as he has done for us. So the next opportunity I have to serve, I want that to go just roaring through your head. Jesus walked into a room and there were stinky, nasty, smelly feet, and he did not want to eat dinner that way. He could have turned to any one of the disciples, and in a nat now, I'd love. What if he'd have turned, Peter, wash feet? Really? But when you decide, I'm going to do it for you, and then you're going to realize, man, if there's a conversation after, we should have thought of that. But they didn't. He always did. And I'm going to end with Pat's great thought at the cross. He loved us to the end. With his last breath. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. The question in the song is, do you know my Jesus? What does that mean? Nicodemus came to him and said, what does it mean? You got to be born again, water and the Spirit. If you have not been born again by water, baptism, as the writer in Romans puts it, a burial. Why wait anymore? If you want to serve Jesus, that's the thing you need to do. Maybe there's some struggle going on in your mind that's keeping you from doing what you need to do. Bring that to Christ. You can do it individually. You can also do it in this company of folks that will love you and pray for you and maybe even have been through it too. And will be willing to offer some suggestions as to how to deal with it. Do you know my Jesus? If we can help you know him better, would you come as we stand and as we sing?